Today, we are talking all about when is the right time to get new tech. So, we're going to first welcome you. We're going to get you to intro yourself. You can tell us all about what we need to know when picking new tech. When is the right time? Now, if I get this wrong, please correct me, but you've been in the industry for about 16 years. And by industry, I mean recruitment industry, but you've also delved into a whole bunch of other people topics and leadership across the years. So tell us a little bit about how you ended up in this role. How did you end up in recruitment, in people topics? What do you love about it?
Thank you, Jessie, for having me. It's a very good question. To be honest, I started with something completely different. I'm an Egyptologist. I did it for a while. And,
did you just say Egyptologist?
Egyptologist, yes. I was searching for dead people. And after a while, I thought maybe I change and search for people who are still alive. And that's the story, right? So I more or less by sheer chance moved into recruiting back then, and yeah, I'm still here in a way, not really into hands-on recruiting anymore, but still very closely connected to everything that is connected to recruiting, people and culture, and everything in that area. I worked in recruiting agencies for a while, then I switched sides and worked in the industry as a recruiter, but also in leadership roles, really setting up recruiting teams, creating processes, supporting companies in their growth, both in normal times, but also in hypergrowth times. And well, what kind of was always part of the journey is, on the one hand, processes, and on the other hand, also which tools, which tech do I need to make those processes work and to make life easier for almost everybody, mainly for the candidates. I'm a huge fan of candidate experience, and I tend to compromise on internal experience if I can guarantee a very, very good candidate experience.
So you're saying that it's important. It's one of the kind of criteria that for you is important when you're looking at tech. I mean, especially recruitment tech, right? There's a lot in that space coming up. There's a lot of tech actually looking at, how to make not just it automated and fast on one side internally, but also making it a great experience on the other side. I think there's tools that do both good. There's tools that do one or the other really, really well. And I haven't seen yet the perfect solution. And that's why it's always hard to know what to get. But I think even before what to get is always the question when to get it, right? And that's what we talk like. That's the question. Everyone's like, when do we get new stuff? But what are the tips we can give the community based on all your experiences and things you've seen? What are the things you need to do to decide when you should get the tech?
I've been thinking about that answer for ages. That is a very straight answer. It's always the right time to look for new tech.
Always. You hear that, all those HR tech vendors, they're like, yes, always.
Always. There's a very small side sentence, and that starts with but. You can always look for new tech, but you need to have your basics completely in place. You need to have a very strong foundation when it comes to your people and culture processes. You need to basically know everything, how you do stuff. You need to know what's working very, very well. You need to know where you still struggle a bit, be it in workload or timing or user experience, right? And you need to have a very, very clear overview on what you have right now. You need to have a very good as-is evaluation. On the other hand, you also need to think about the future, because if you just implement new tech based on your current situation, you run into a very strong risk of having to do the same thing every year again, because your business develops, your processes develop, the strategy also develops, right? It could be that for the next 12 to 18 months, You try to stay stable when it comes to workforce, right? You just do replacement, you develop the people you have, but you also know that after that stability phase, you will move into maybe a growth phase where you do not recruit whatever 50 people per year, but 300, 400. And if you select the tech based on the current situation, you might not be able to deal with the coming phase, because you have a tool that's super easy to use, that's whatever perfectly capable of doing a slow amount of recruiting, but it's not able to scale things up because the setting is not good, the processes are not good, or you cannot plan properly. That's one of my long-time favorites. People call it strategic workforce planning. And in all companies I worked at, it was, how can I put it nicely, improvable, if not existent.
It could be better.
So, for instance, if you take a look into that, you need to be able to plan your growth phase properly. There are so many different facets and aspects involved that you also need to be very clear from the beginning. So it does not help to plan your growth if you don't have a proper level structure in place, if you don't know how the teams will look like, what the salaries will look like, how people
it's your
can develop.
operating model, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like if you don't have a thought, if you don't understand how your company operates and where you need to go and what you need to do to get there, like you don't have a strategy for all parts of the business and also how you build the business internally. So all these foundational principles, I call them principles, foundations, they're very similar, right? It's the same thing. We're talking about, you're not going to just go out and buy new tech, right? If you're going to get new tech and you're thinking about new tech, the steps are: have your principles in place first, align what you're buying to your strategy, know your problems. You talked about just now, knowing what the problems are, and knowing where you are, your as is evaluation. That's important. A lot of companies don't do that. They're like, I know those kind of problems, but they don't really understand it. They're just like, it's just annoying me. Let's just quick, it's just actionary, reactionary complaints. Let's just put something in. And actually, you touched on something interesting there as well around the future. So planning for the future. And I'm a strong believer in tech being useful for a period of time, not forever. I think businesses these days evolve so quickly and change so much over the years. Like, a lot of the companies we even know today aren't like older than 10 years old. Like, companies used to be for 50, 60 years in the market. So things are changing very, very quickly. You go from zero to 100 to 2000 to unicorn to layoffs to God knows what these days in a matter of 5 years. So tech, I think, can evolve with the business if it's part of the plan. What's your rule of thumb in terms of, for what kind of period should, like, your core HR recruitment tech, what kind of timeline do you give that when you're looking at businesses? I guess it also depends on the growth, right? But is there like a rule of thumb? I usually say it lasts you at least 2 to 3 years, if not more than 3 years, especially when it's a HR system. But there can be times when you have to change it. That's my rule of thumb. What are your thoughts?
So my thoughts are in similar lines, right? So it doesn't make sense to buy or implement new tech every year or even every other year, because the time you spend in doing that does not pay back, for sure not. So you really should have a bigger horizon time-wise, but I would not nail it down to time, not specifically for me. When it comes to, let's say, HRIS, it heavily depends on the company size. There are HRIS around that are only for big companies. They look very shiny, but they are completely over the top for small or medium-sized companies. So it doesn't make sense to actually start looking into those unless you're on the brink of kind of moving from medium-sized business to a corporate business. Then it might make sense to actually go the one level higher when it comes to tools, right? Other than that, choose the tool that will serve you best for your needs, and also for your people strategy or the company strategy. And if the company strategy says we will not grow beyond a certain number, that's fine, because then you have a already quite
clear,
defined space where you
yeah.
can move, or where you can operate, and then pick the best thing there. And also, again, I think I'm repeating myself. You need to set it up in a way that it will help you with your future needs. It should do daily business right now as well, but it should be able to also help you with your future needs, and have everything in place, different modules, different kind of scale up possibilities, to make sure that you do not have to change too often.
Yeah, I mean, the whole HRIS thing, changing too often isn't fun. Though I do think it's one of those things where it's like, be open-minded, be curious, understand the market, know what's out there, get yourself informed, know what the limitations are of the system you have, understand your as is, like you said. And I think, obviously plan the best you can, plan based on what you know now. And of course, with all the best plans, they change. So even though you can have a really well laid out strategy, a really well laid out plan of what you think the business will do and how it will grow, of course, things happen. There can be layoffs, or there can be hyperscale coming up. There could be, a whole lot of external factors impacting business. And I think that's where, having these principles, like you said, foundations, understanding where you are, where you're going in the moment that you make decisions, and as you're, with all the information available to you, is super important. But I think also that it's important to just be open-minded that you may have to make adjustments to that plan. Something happens, some big event, it stops you in your tracks, and the company pivots and strategy pivots. And when that pivots, so does the people strategy, I guess. What is your tip? What have you done in the past that's worked well when it comes to convincing stakeholders when the right moment is? Because let's say you've got your business strategy, you got your people strategy, and like we're sitting in the shit, like we're sitting in the day to day, like we know it, we know what the really core problems are, but it's sometimes hard to articulate and get that through to the people making the like, yes, go ahead and do this kind of decision. What is the thing, the number one thing you have to do if you're going to try and convince people to get new tech?
That's a good one. I guess it's easier to speak in a recruiting example now, because it sounds a bit bad, right? But everybody thinks they know that how recruiting works, and that it's not that.
I mean, isn't it easy?
Yeah, it's super easy.
Isn't it just like having interviews?
Planning interviews and that's basically
scheduling.
Yeah. So I actually have I'm not sure whether it's good, but I have a real life example. Also about changes, right? A few years ago, I joined the company in a recruiting leadership role, and the goal was to really set up everything for a hypergrowth phase. So I joined, I saw the tool that they were using, and initially I thought, well, we can make do with it. And it's okay-ish to at least have it for some time, and then try to find something different. It lasted roughly 6 work hours on my very first day, because I tried to figure out some basic metrics out of recruiting, like time to hire, how long people are in one stage, how many people we have per role, right? And I failed miserably in getting any meaningful data out of the tool. There were several reports that should give the same numbers, but they did not. And then I said, well, my goal is hypergrowth. hypergrowth only works with a lot of transparency. Leadership teams need to know what's going on. They need to see meaningful data. We need to see meaningful data as a team to be able to kind of tweak the process so we actually meet our goals. And I just couldn't do it. And my life hack was to tell my recruiters, please use Excel and track everything you do, at least for the time being, because otherwise we don't have any meaningful information on how we are progressing, right? And that was the easiest argument and the easiest sales pitch I ever could do, because I just spoke with my boss and the CEO saying, we want to hire, we want to grow, we want to know how it's going to work and what we need to do to really bring it to life. We cannot do it with this tool. It's not going to work out.
You basically were like feeding them what they need to know, right? You were giving them. That's it's an easy example, but it's still true, right? They care about getting people. They care about the hyperscale, right? They care about getting the people in to do the work, to drive the revenue, to drive the sales. So all you had to do was make sure you solved their pain point, which was like, you're not going to get this unless we do that, which is pretty. And I don't know, like the amount of tools that don't have good data, like analysis or like data reporting, is crazy. Like I know it wasn't as popular and it wasn't a thing back in the day, 5 years ago, to do that. But now it's like it's almost like incomprehensible that it wouldn't be available, but it is. And it's so many businesses actually use Excel. I mean, I was in a hyperscale business using Excel because there wasn't a better way to do things. And yeah, anyway, I could digress there, but I'm not going to. So your example is very real. And your business case, I guess, was very clear.
And I guess that's the same for all HR tech, right? You just need to find the pain points and you need to figure out what's working and what doesn't work and what do we need to take the next step with the tool, with the people. And if you have that, you also have a very good case that you can argue with your leadership teams. But then I'm circling back again somehow. You need to know everything that you're doing right now, and you need to have your basics in place to be able to address those small bits and pieces that will enable you to create and come up with the right arguments that are kind of arguing for your case. And if it's just change of tool or maybe even implementing a new tool that would benefit very, very strongly towards whatever engagement or employee satisfaction or being able to measure employee satisfaction, because you just cannot do it with Google Form or whatever. It doesn't really make sense. So have the basics again, and then you can build almost every case you need to build and sell it. There is also one more thing that kind of became apparent over the past few years, and I implemented several tools. You can also, let me rephrase, people tend to overcomplicate things. So we also have the tendency to overcomplicate our people processes, our recruiting processes, right? And then you go into your due diligence, you start looking for tools, and all tools have different processes than your own process, right? That's also something that should kind of trigger your thought processes and say, everybody is doing that piece differently. We have whatever, a 10-step process to get to the result we need, and those tools do it in 5. Maybe our process is faulty, right? And not the tool process. So you can use it both ways to also do some kind of sanity checks on your internal things, how you do stuff, and then make sure that you find some kind of way in the middle that is kind of living up to your needs and expectations, but also can still be implemented into the tool without heavy coding exercises, right?
Yeah.
Because as soon as you start having heavy coding on a
Customizing.
tool, it's nobody can afford it anyway, right? So it's also
Yeah.
not super helpful.
Yeah, and it also takes the point away of getting like something easy, an easy solution, and then you're just complicating it with processes that maybe could be adjusted. I mean, I'm a fan of like, don't reinvent the wheel. Like
Mm,
your 3-step process is not better than that 2-step process. That's not better than that 5-step process. I think it should suit the business. It needs to be thought about,
mm,
and it needs to be, things can, we need to be more flexible in the way we think. Like you said, we're looking at, if you're trying to streamline, make things efficient, make sure that people can be onboarded onto things as well, right? Like, I mean, if your process is 10 steps, it's a lot harder to remember than 2. So, there's things that I think HR don't help themselves with. And
mm,
that's why and also sometimes the processes are just siloed, right? Like one team's doing
mm,
it like this, one team's doing it like that. I mean, we've all seen it, where things don't align and people are like, hang on, I don't know what you're doing over there, because,
mm,
the rest of the team don't understand the process. So these basics of how do you operate within your team? How does information move throughout the systems,
mm,
throughout the teams? It's all so important for deciding when to get
mm,
new tech, because time and time again, I've seen companies, they're like, we need tech. And they're like, yeah, let's get it. And they get it in. And then they're like, our data's terrible. Our processes don't work. Our
mm,
teams are not syncing. So the tool itself can't be utilized properly because you don't
mm,
have any of the things in. You're like, how do we implement this into a
mm,
mess? You can't implement it into a mess. You have to implement it into some kind of logical structure, or it's just a hodgepodge, or you end
mm,
up not, using features because you're like, well, it's too hard, so we're just going to leave that. And there's always a lot to do when it comes to improving HR and improving how, what tech is there, and,
mm.
and making things better. But I think that we always skip over the fundamentals. Coming back to what you first said,
Yeah.
which I think is the key takeaway, right? Like, we need foundations. We need the
Mm.
foundations. Look, HR tech debt is not fun. We need foundations. All right, now we're coming close to the end of our session here, but I wanted to ask: is there one final tip when it comes to HR tech, when choosing at the beginning of this whole process? What
Mm.
is like the number one thing not to forget?
There's many things not to forget, but I guess what's super important for all tech projects, you need to really have a full list of requirements. What do I need? How does the perfect outcome look like when I have the tool? And that also includes small bits and pieces, but also major improvements, major tasks that maybe are automated, or that overview is easier, that you can do payroll in more than one country, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So you're a startup and you plan to open 2 offices in 2 different countries in the next year. You need to put that into your
Mm-hmm.
requirements, right? Because there are tools around that cannot really do that. So that's some kind of drop out questions or requirements that you need to have very, very clearly defined. And you need to go through those requirements with every tool you're looking into. How does it rank against my
Mm-hmm.
perfect outcome? Can it be implemented? Does it grow with me? How can I bring it to life? And how much does it cost? Right.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
also a big
it's critical. I mean, I like to compare it. I mean, that's the perfect tip, because it's also it's such an obvious thing to do, but so many people don't do it actually. It's like having a job description, right? Or not having one. It's like, we just need this role. And you're like, what role is it? And you're like, let's say, I don't know, HR manager. You're like, cool, we need a HR manager. And you're like, that's what we need. It's like, oh, they need these things. It's like, really? What else? Like really understanding what it is that you need. It's like candidate job match. It's like tool business match. It's a very similar thing. I'm always talking about it because recruitment is the easiest thing to align to a tech, process. It's the same, almost the same steps, just applied slightly differently. So yeah, love it. Love that. That's the number one thing. I'm voting number one as well, outside of principles and foundations, because that was our number one.
Yeah, that's the
Like
number
the
one.
first one,
Yeah,
the pre-requirement to
yeah.
starting, and that'll help us work out
Mm,
when to actually start the project,
mm,
when you have all those principles in place.
mm.
So thank you so much for joining. We appreciate your time if you joined, and this will be live on YouTube. So make sure you subscribe on the Stacked YouTube to keep up to date with all of our interviews with experts like Christian. Christian can be found on LinkedIn, so please reach out to him there. And if you don't know, he has a business called the UnleashPeople, where they do all sorts of people strategy, recruitment strategy, all things to do with leadership, how to basically build a HR function that functions. So please reach out to him if you need any help. Thank you so much for joining, Christian.
Thank you for having me, Jessie. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. We'll talk soon. Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.